There is a ton of Cleveland Browns news, good and bad. And we're going to look at their Week 11 opponent, the New Orleans Saints. There's a lot of show to get to. So let's do it right now on the Sick Podcast with Andy Mcnamara.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy Mcnamara. The sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Chubba Lubba Hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Hello, everybody. Andy Mcnamara with you. Sick Podcast with Andy Mcnamara as we roll through Browns training camp. And this is really where training camp climaxes this week as the Minnesota Vikings are in town in Berea for these joint practices. And this is really in recent years taken on, I think for the coaching staff anyway, what they say, Kevin Stefanski, the most valuable pieces of work, right? You're away from the fans. You're not showing everything on national TV. You're able to really work on things and make it competitive. No hitting on the quarterbacks. But this is really where we want to see coming out of this Minnesota Vikings practice set confidence from the beat reporters and hearing like, okay, you know what? Watson's good. We're feeling good. And, we can roll from here. That's what we want because word came out, of course, that Deshaun Watson will play in the third and final preseason game, the Seattle Seahawks game. They got to fly all the way out there because then after that, you still have 15 days until week 1. So they practice Minnesota. They'll play Minnesota. No starters will go. That's kind of a bit of a useless game to watch itself. But the main thing is the practice. Make sure you're following us on all social media, on Twitter, X, at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81, Instagram and TikTok, at AndyMCSports. Click subscribe, notifications on. Lots of fantasy football talk coming up in the upcoming weeks and all that too. And we'll get to some more Browns news in a little bit. Couple quick pointers before I bring on Jeff Nowak, sideline reporter and digital reporter for the New Orleans Saints with Odyssey Sports. Does a ton of great work there. We'll bring him on in a moment to talk about that Browns Week 11 opponent. But some big news. Let's start with the good. The good news. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah signed 3-year contract extension, $39 million, $20+ million of that guaranteed. Fantastic news for a guy who really, remember that back to that playoff loss to Houston. He was the only guy on defense that really showed up. He balled out. The big thing was with the durability, right? So last year he put on some weight, looked real good. We put up on social your one-word answers, reaction to that. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Got a couple good ones there. So JOK locked and loaded, and I expect them to take another step forward. This guy is primed, and as long as that durability keeps up, we're going to be good. Now, bad news, I'm sure you heard, Michael Hall, rookie defensive tackle, Brown second-round pick out of Ohio State. Well, he had to turn himself into the police. Turn himself into the police. Domestic assault. Allegedly, he has apparently put in a not guilty plea. He's charged with a whole. I'm not going to go through. We try to keep the show positive. The stuff, if what he is accused of is true, he needs to be in jail and kicked off the team. But he says not guilty. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm going to let the legal process play out before finalizing judgment. That's the bad news. He was at practice today, full pads, and he was engaged and going against the Minnesota Vikings. So it looks like the Browns might wait to see how that legal process comes out too. He won't be back in court till September 10th to be arraigned and all that stuff. So an unfortunate distraction. Hopefully what is accused of is not true because it's pretty heinous. So that's the bad side. We got that. Other quick news out of the first day of the scrimmage with the Vikings. Ward not there. Denzel Ward not battling Justin Jefferson. We're looking forward to kind of reports of that one-on-one battle. Still recovering. Hard collision with Elijah Moore a couple days back. Apparently not injured, but they're playing it careful. And the fact that Denzel Ward has at times been delicate, right? He's missed games every year of his career. You want to be extra careful there. So we'll get to a bit more Browns news as the day goes on. But those are kind of those points. Really interested to see how they come out of this this stretch of practices against the Minnesota Vikings. We want to hear improvement on the offense because coming out of the Greenbrier, Deshaun Watson looked good, then not so good. Interceptions, but the best looking quarterback has been DTR against the third teams, mind you, but just something to keep in mind. Okay, so we've gone through the Browns' first bunch of opponents here. Week 10 is the bye week. Okay, week 10 is the bye week. So we've gone through 9 opponents. Week 10 was the bye. So we're saying we're coming out of that one. And then it is the New Orleans Saints are in town. And let's bring on our guy who covers the New Orleans Saints, Jeff Nowak, digital sports producer and sideline reporter for Odyssey Sports and WWLAM FM. And you're not in New Orleans. You're in, where are you, Jeff?
I am in Irvine, California, and I have been for quite some time, since late July. It's funny, the Browns are at the Greenbrier. Yeah. The last time the Saints held a camp out of New Orleans, it was for 3 years at the Greenbrier.
Oh.
Stopped. That's one of the reasons it's set up to host training camps, because Sean Payton, at the time was dating Miss West Virginia. That's the part of it that we get into. They're married now.
Oh.
There's some instinct. But yeah, so they were there for 3 straight years and they liked it. But the problem was they went 7-9. Those were the 3 7-9 years, right?
Ooh.
Came back and had camp in Metairie starting in 2017. You had that great draft class, and then they went to the playoffs 4 straight years. So that's part of the reason they stopped going. And then this year they're doing work on the facility in Metairie, and so they came out here and they're actually having camp where the Rams have been previously.
Oh.
So it's kind of funny how teams just kind of trade off these like location training camps the way they do. But yeah, we've been in Irvine. Yeah. Today was day 16 of practice. It's all melding together. I am, but we're still out there, and we're getting ready for the 49ers on Sunday.
Getting ready for the 49ers, and yeah, that's a bit of a rough go being just siphoned there and all that. That, you know what though? We look at how really look ahead of how this season could be going for both these clubs when they meet November 17th. It's a long way away. But when we take a look at this Saints team, I'll give you my outsider quick look, and you correct me or give what kind of the real story is. My view on the Saints right now is a team that they're almost like in purgatory. Like they're not bad, but they're not good. And they got some exciting pieces, but then they also don't. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it as this is the year where you decide one way or the other, right? Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, they're kind of in that middle ground, but you're also looking at a team that had to move on from Drew Brees, right? Yep. That's not easy to do. Look at the Steelers and how things have gone for them. Look at the Patriots and how things have gone for them, right? You look at the Chargers, a team that had to move on from Phillip Rivers, has Justin Herbert. Even they're kind of stuck in that middle ground. So it's not like it's easy to do that.
No.
Now they didn't reset the way that some teams might, right? Like the Bucks kind of had that reset year, but even they're kind of right in the middle. They just did it with a much cleaner cap table. But I kind of look at it. So you moved on from Drew Brees. You had that last year with Sean Payton, and you went 9-8, missed the playoffs on tiebreaker in week 18, right? Then Sean Payton leaves. He's obviously now in Denver. You go 7-10. They stuck with Dennis Allen, right? So you go 7-10 that year 1, which that's kind of that's the baseline. You're kind of setting a standard, and you're looking. They rebuilt their defense. The next year they go 9-8 again, missed the playoffs on the tiebreaker. This year they've rebuilt the offense, and I think that's kind of like when you say stuck in purgatory. Yeah, if you go out there and you go 8-9, 9-8 again, then you start to feel really like, and I'm sure Saints fans already do feel this way, but it's not really reasonable. It's just a product of coming off the Brees era where anything short of 11 wins was a failure. Now, I think getting back to the playoffs this year, if you can go out and win 10, 11 games this year, get back to the playoffs, then suddenly it feels like, yeah, okay, you're on an upward trajectory. If you go the other direction, then I think you've kind of fallen off a cliff, and you probably do reset the deck entirely, hold on to the core pieces that you think are going to help you, sell off. So I hate saying sell off because that sounds so impersonal, but kind of move on from some of the veteran pieces like the DeMario Davises, the Cam Jordans, the guys who won't be around for a recycle, and you go from there. But right now, I think they do feel like they still have a window, in part because the NFC South is weak.
Sure.
And, they were tied for, like, we can pretend that they were so far off. The Bucs were way better. Both teams went 9-8. The Bucs won.
Not really.
So, I mean, it's right there. So I think that's kind of where the team is approaching it from. And this is going to be the answer, right? If you're Dennis Allen, it's like, okay, you got this shot to prove that you can go to the playoffs, win 10 games. And if you can't do it, then, hey, we gave you everything that you've asked for, and we'll see what happens. But that's where that's where I am. Right
gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. The NFC South, it's not, there's not, it's not the AFC West. There's not just Chiefs and and then if you're hoping for a while, you can win that division. Like I still love old Baker Mayfield, but that team, you're right. It was right there. It could have gone either way. Carolina Panthers, forget it.
You get Falcons are twice, right?
You play them twice. The Falcons are interesting, but that's up in the air. So that's the type of situation that you're looking at here. Now, the Derek Carr, and I loved Derek Carr coming out of college, and I think, what was it? Was it 2017? He had that broken leg. That was the year with the Raiders, and he had that great year. Busted his leg. They went to the playoffs, and he couldn't play.
Yep.
And he's been a bit up and down. But is Derek, I think Derek Carr is good enough to get you to win the division. Like, I think he's a good enough QB. I think he gets dumped on unfairly quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Schatz, who does the Football Almanac every year, he put it in a good way, which is like, I think a lot of people like to, dump on Derek Carr and say he's this terrible quarterback. And that's not really the answer. What is the case? It's really more, he's an average quarterback.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a replacement level quarterback. And that's a lot of times that's actually good enough to get you to the postseason. Is it good enough to win a Super Bowl? Now that's an entirely different question. But, we did see, I think he and Jared Goff are not that far apart from each other. The difference is Jared Goff is in a situation where he's playing right to his ceiling. And Derek has been in a situation the last several years with the Raiders and this past year with the Saints where I think he's, you're playing closer to your floor or your baseline because of how things have gone around him and the offense being what it was and Pete Carmichael trying to run like a reflection of Sean Payton's scheme that he did not build or really understand. And so that's what you're hoping for this year is you can get him a little closer to his ceiling. Now, Jared Goff's obviously younger. You feel a little better about what he can do for you. But then you look at, okay, what are we paying Derek Carr? And you're talking a 4-year, $150 million deal. Makes him the 17th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Right?
So, yeah. And the question is always, okay, if he's not good enough, who are you replacing him with? That's always the question that fans can't answer. Is like, he's a bum, get him out. Okay, all right. Let's say he is. Who are you getting?
Yeah.
And the answer quite often, look, you know what the Browns, our quarterback hell that we've been through. Average, we would have taken average many a season, let me tell you. So you look at Derek Carr, it's like, okay, well, where else do you go? Let me ask you about Spencer Rattler. And I got to tell you, this is something I think if we look a year or two in the future, we know it's about situation and landing spot. There's potential. But this is a guy like 2 years ago was supposed to be number one, came crashing down, built himself back up quietly, and seems size-wise built for that traditional Drew Brees Saint offense. What's been sort of the vibe, the excitement, if any, about Spencer Rattler and his potential in the future?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, they're not really running the Drew Brees offense anymore. So it's not looking at a guy and saying, oh, he's like Drew Brees isn't really the answer now that it might have been 2 years ago when Drew retired, or 3 years ago when Drew retired. Spencer's look good, and he's a 5th round pick, and I think that's the best thing you can say about a 5th round pick or a mid-round pick or even a 2nd or 3rd round pick, right? Like if you're going outside the 1st round as a quarterback, in most cases you're a developmental guy. In all cases, really, and some guys maybe by virtue of circumstance can get ahead of that, like a Dak Prescott, a Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
they had a perfect situation around them. You're talking about the best offensive line in football. You're talking about the best defense in football. Where you're like, okay, we can deal with the developmental part of at the quarterback position, and you're also benefiting from the contract. For a guy in those situations, most of the time, it's does he look like a guy who could be a starter? Not is he ready right now? Because I would argue that no rookies are ready right now. Some do better than others, but every rookie quarterback in NFL history would have benefited from not starting week 1 because you just need time. It's just a fact. Like you need to learn how to play at the NFL level. Right. So I see a quarterback in Spencer Rattler and the Jake Hayner's here as well. Another Fresno State guy who could be a starting quarterback down the road. Is he ready now? Absolutely not. And the reason that there's a lot of hype around him in terms of play him now, it's really more about, I don't like Derek Carr. Give me anybody. Give me literally anybody.
The shy backup quarterback can be the most popular guy, right?
Yes, and it's like
Yeah.
if anyone's honest with themselves in Saints country, it's like who gives you the best chance to actually win games this year? No question, it's Derek Carr.
Yeah,
But then there's that secondary element of like, yeah, but I kind of want him to lose anyway because I want the coach gone, right? So there's that too. But no, Spencer's look good. Spencer looks like a guy. He has elite arm talent, and that's why he was that Heisman front runner going into his sophomore year at Oklahoma. Then he was supplanted by Caleb Williams, right? That's why he was talked about at one point as a potential number 1 overall pick. Like that's obviously not something that lasted very long, but the fact that the conversation was happening at all tells you how much people liked his skill set at that point. He seems to think through the game well. He's a good athlete. He's the height doesn't help him.
Sure.
He's probably a poor man 6 foot, and by that I mean he's probably 5'11".
Right.
And
it's reaching, tiptoe.
Yeah. But you can see the ability, and the ball just flies out of his hand. The arm talent is clear. Now, arm talent, and I have this argument with people all the time. It's like arm talent only matters with quarterbacks who aren't playing. Once the arm talent starts to be in the game, it's like 10% about arm talent. Every quarterback who's playing in the NFL, who's starting in the NFL, has NFL arm talent, right?
Yeah.
With the exception of like maybe like a Chad Pennington, like guys like
right.
So few, like that's like in college, I would say arm talent is like 60% of the equation, and because the concepts are simpler and things don't move as fast. In the NFL, arm talent becomes maybe 20% of the equation, and then you're talking about how quickly can you process. Where do you go with the ball? Do you understand what the defense is doing? Do you understand what the offense is supposed to do when the defense is doing certain things? And, can you get through your progressions? Can you make the plays in big moments? Not just can you make this throw? Can you throw the ball 80 yards? Can you throw the ball 30 yards on a dime with a defensive end breathing down your neck? Like these are all things that you cannot say about a guy's like, he has great arm talent. Can he use it? So that's what we'll find out. And we saw him in the preseason opener, looked solid. He went with the threes. He led a 2-minute drill at the end of the game to kick a game-winning field goal. So I like what I've seen from him. That said, I'm not sure if he's even going to be the backup this year because I think Jake Haener is in a better position to be a immediate backup quarterback. But we'll find out. That's kind of the quarterback competition that's going on. But I understand why people are excited about Spencer. And, it's obviously the name recognition. Sure. I had someone say, hey, if his name was Spencer Johnson, no one would be as excited about it. He's got a cool name.
Fair.
Just that's
probably fair.
Rattlesnake thing going on. But no, I've enjoyed watching him. He's a fun guy. The funniest nickname I've heard for him so far is like Timu Mahomes. Because he kind of looks like, the new the younger Pat Mahomes. But that's where I am right now.
Yeah, I saw a meme. It's like Spencer Rattler is the actor they would hire to play Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, basically, right. Yeah.
Play the young Pat Mahomes. Okay, so we got Derek Carr. People aren't loving it, but Chris Olave is a stud. We know that. Alvin Kamara and that running back group seems like we've seen the same type of story for. Like this is like the 3rd year. Jamal Williams is there, and he's a good handcuff. And Kendre Miller I liked him in spurts last year. And Kamara, is there like the running game in that group? Where are they at? Because the Browns had an issue, and they're trying to stifle up and make that middle a lot tougher to get through with the defensive line upgrades. So how worried should Browns fans be about the running game for the Saints?
Yeah, so it's funny because we haven't really seen the Saints try to run this scheme, the Clint Kubiak kind of West Coast scheme. He's coming from the Shanahan Kubiak tree, obviously. And, it's similar to what the Dolphins are running. It's going to be similar to what the 49ers run. And I think there's some hope that with that scheme, kind of change, Alvin can get a little bit closer to the Alvin that we remember from 2020, 2021. He's had a little bit of a downturn the past 2 seasons, but I personally don't think you're watching a guy who's fallen off physically. I think that a lot of it had to do with the offense. So we'll see. That said, the offensive line hasn't gotten much better. So that's not going to be the answer in terms of like, oh, well, they can block for him now. I don't know if that's the case.
Right.
As I sit here currently, Alvin has not participated in the last 2 practices. Going into camp, there was some talks about, is he going to hold out? He wants a new contract. When you know that's the background, and then suddenly the running back is not there for 2 days in a row with what the head coach called back stiffness. You have to ask, okay, is this the start of kind of a low-key background holdout where I don't want to pick up fines for skipping practice. I don't want to pay $50,000 a day like Hassan Reddick over in New York or CeeDee Lamb with the Cowboys. Yeah. But I do want to make this awkward for you and make you understand that I want my money. So we'll see how that plays out. I have a feeling that that's a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, the new hold in, as they say, right? The hold
but
in.
but it's also like, and we'll see how that plays out. I actually think they're going to get something done, but that's going to be the question: is can Alvin kind of have that career renaissance in this new offense? If he does, then I feel really good about the running game. If he doesn't, then I think you're in trouble because going into the season, you would have looked at Kendre Miller, like you said, and like, oh, maybe this is the guy. Kendre, first day of camp, goes out there in individual drills, pulls his hamstring. We have not seen him since.
Boy,
like I said, day 16.
Just like that. Yeah.
Gone. And, I don't think his status on the roster was exactly concrete because he was drafted by a different offensive staff.
Right.
So he's got to come out here and prove that he not only deserves that shot, but that he can do it in the first place. And we just haven't seen it. So I think you're going to end up seeing Jordan Mims, another guy at Fresno State. It's a very popular school for this offense.
Right.
I think he's going to end up being the third string behind Alvin and Jamal. And we'll see how that goes. The problem with saying Jamal is a handcuff is I don't think Jamal can do the things that Alvin can do. So even if you lose Alvin, I don't think that you're going to say, well, we're just going to load Jamal up with 25 carries. I think you would end up replacing some of those reps with a guy like Jordan Mims, who he's not Alvin, but he can do some of the things that you'd want Alvin to do. So I would say he's kind of the Alvin handcuff, and Jamal's value kind of stays static if we're talking about a fantasy football perspective.
That's where I was getting at. If you keep Jamal's role with Mims there might not change. It would be Mims who would kind of potentially supplant if Kamara missed time.
Yeah, I think you would you would put more reps onto Jamal, but they would be similar reps to what he was getting. Like you're not going to have him as your third down back, for example, unless you're talking about pass protection. But no, the run game is sketchy at best, and we'll have to see. Like you're in a situation where it's like I wouldn't be stunned if Kendre gets cut. Just because he hasn't shown it, and there was some frustration last year. I know this of like he sprained his ankle in week 9. He didn't come back till week 18. There was some within the organization that felt like, hey, he should be back by now. Like this is not a 10-week injury here. This is and that's been the case. There's this idea that hey, we don't feel like he's doing what he needs to do to prepare himself to be an NFL football player, to be a pro, and that's a quick way to lose faith within your organization. So I don't know, maybe this is a wake-up call for him and we'll see, but either way, the run game, that's the biggest variable for me beyond maybe the right tackle position. Where if it goes well, this offense has a chance to be a plus unit, and I feel confident in the defense. If you can't run the ball, then this offense is going to be stuck in the mud all season.
Let's talk about that defense in conversation with Jeff Nowak. Covers the New Orleans Saints in day 16 out in California at camp. He's grinding. He's stuck in the hotel, kind enough to join us here. This Browns offense under Deshaun Watson. Jeff, this Browns team, every piece seems to be there with the question of the quarterback. If Deshaun Watson looks like Houston Deshaun, giddy up, let's go. If he doesn't or he gets hurt again, well, we don't have Joe Flacco coming to save us. It's Jameis Winston, and
I know him.
Jameis, entertaining guy. We like him, right? He talks a good game, but that's a bit iffy. That Saints defense, you mentioned you like it. What do we like most? Is it pressuring the quarterback, stopping the run? What are we liking about this defense?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right? So Marshawn Lattimore's still here. He's dealt with a hip flexor injury throughout camp. We haven't seen him for a while. I think he'll be fine, but we'll go from there. And the nice thing is, even if he's not there, you feel pretty good about the cornerback room. Like I think they have a pretty strong cornerback room. Paulson Adebo has been there for the last few years. He ended up, and he's played basically CB1 because Marshawn's been hurt, whether it was a spleen injury, whether it was a high ankle sprain. Like Paulson had to be that guy, and he's played well. They drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry in the second round. This team likes him a lot, and it's easy to understand why. He comes out of that Alabama scheme. Whenever you're coached by Nick Saban, you're going to enter the NFL a little ahead of the curve. As a defensive back. And so you see that like he understands things a lot more quickly than you would expect a rookie to. So if they have to go with him early on, I think they feel good about it. And then another second round pick in Alontae Taylor, who's going to be in the slot for his second straight year. So they feel good about that group. They feel good about the linebacker group and the pass rush. In the last year, I felt like the pass rush was a weakness. I think this year, with the addition of Chase Young, a healthy Chase Young and a motivated Chase Young, they have a chance to be a really dangerous group, particularly on third downs, because what we've also seen is a commitment from Cam Jordan to shift inside in NASCAR reps and play defensive tackle, which is something he's never wanted to do. He hates it. it's like this least favorite thing. But it's kind of like you talk about Anthony Davis in the NBA. It's like he doesn't like playing center, but should play center because it's his best position, right? And I think that's the case with Cam Jordan right now. Is when you can shift him inside and he becomes kind of this interior rusher who can also play the run. Then you have Chase Young outside of him or Carl Granderson outside of him. And then Brian Brzee, a first-round pick from last year. Suddenly, you're talking about third and long situations. Like, I'm probably going to run the ball because that group is scary. And so when you combine that with the confidence in the cornerback room, you got Tyrann Mathieu. The other safety is a little bit questionable at this point. I don't know. Like, I think if you can rush and cover at an elite level, you're an elite defense.
Right.
So
well, if you can rotate like that, and Deshaun running around, improvising, that makes me a little nervous. I got a funny Cam Jordan story for you. So 2019, we're on Disney cruise with my kids. We see this massive man. I'm like, holy, like he actually blocked out the sun on the deck, on the food deck. I'm like, whoa, that's Cam Jordan. And my daughter at the time, she was like 7. And she's like, who's that, Daddy? I said, it's Cam Jordan. He plays for the Saints. And we're all Browns fans in the house. So she goes, he doesn't play for the Browns? I'm going to go tell him he stinks. She starts marching. I'm like, no, Daddy doesn't want to go overboard. I don't want to be thrown over. And he had his daughters with him. He had 2 ice cream cones, looked like they were the size of like a toy. And just looked like, I didn't bug him, but it looked like he was having a great time. But what a massive dude in person. I couldn't imagine him running on you. Oh.
Yeah, no, it's funny. He came into this camp. He said, he had injuries last year that he never had to deal with prior. Like it's funny. He played in all 17 games. It's actually the first time in his career he's played 17 games because every other year in his career he played 16 games. Now that means recently that you've missed a game, but he went his first 11 NFL seasons without missing a game.
Wow.
So and then last year he sprained his ankle in Week 10 against the Falcons. And he played, he came back the next week and played, sprained his ankle again, same ankle. He was like, I didn't even realize you could sprain the same ankle twice in that short of a period. He ended up having to have surgery, but he played through it. And that's why, you look at his numbers and they're a lot lower than you would hope for a guy who I would say is a Hall of Famer when you really put the numbers down in terms of the longevity and what he's been able to accomplish. Franchise leader in sacks. He came into this camp. He said he touched 269 on the scale for the first time in since high school. And he came into this camp a little slimmer, and then he got into camp, and it was like, actually, Cam, we're going to need you to shift inside the defensive tackle.
He's like,
He was just like, God dang it.
I just got skinny.
I got to put that weight back on. But it's been nice. He's been able to eat whatever he wants. So, he's kind of bulking back up to, he wants to play at like 280. So,
wow.
That's and that's kind of the typical size the Saints look for is like 275, 280. And if you're going to shift inside, that's what you need. But no, it's funny you mentioned that. Like Cam would have gotten a kick out of that if something came up. He'd probably tweeted about it.
You stink.
No, he's a great character and he's fun to cover, and that's why there's a lot of players on the Saints, and you look at this defense. And you talk about Tyrann Mathieu in his 30s, Demario Davis is in his 30s, Cam Jordan's in his mid 30s. Cam Jordan and I are the exact same age. And that's why I get a kick out of when we talk about old players, and I'm like, oh,
right.
There's a lot of leadership on this group, and that's why. You look at a team that's like, okay, people aren't loving the talent level. They don't like some of the decisions, how they handle the salary cap. Leadership goes a long way when it comes to winning 10, 11 games. Like when you're talking about the difference between winning 7 games and winning 10 games, it's really not that much separating those two things. Right.
Especially in that division where you get those on paper easier games. Right.
Right. And so that's where I think the Saints are going to benefit from that. And Cam's a big part of that. But yeah, if the pass rush I worry that this is going to be a team, and we'll see in week against the Browns, because I think the Browns matchup is going to be one that exposes the weaknesses of this offensive line in particular. Okay. But, I think this is going to be a frustrating season for Saints fans just because I do think this defense is going to be legit. I think it's going to be a top 5 group, but there's a scenario where the offense is a bottom 5 group, and we end up with the Rex Grossman Bears, which that's a bad example because they actually went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? I think there's a chance for this defense to be really good, but it's so frustrating that the offense cannot take advantage of it. And you talk about complementary football. And if this season goes poorly for the Saints, it's going to be because of that. It's because the defense is going to be putting the offense in situations they are not taking advantage of.
And they can't take advantage.
And so we'll see how that goes. But that's where I am right now.
So week 11, play the Browns. For the Saints, the 2 games previous in Carolina versus the Panthers. If it's like last year, that should be a W. Then against the Falcons. I'm intrigued by that team. I want to see, is it Cousins? Is it Penix in there? Well, how does that look? right after. Then the Browns. So give me your way too early, not going to hold it to prediction. Week 11, Browns, Saints, New Orleans we're in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's in New Orleans.
Yeah, we're in New Orleans. Okay. So give me your prediction. What do you think?
It's funny at that point in the season, so much of it comes down to health. And if Nick Chubb is there, right, like that's a different game than last year. You're talking about like that offense changed. Now you're talking about Joe Flacco and whoever else, right? So by week 11, we could be talking about two different teams. I'd pick the Browns personally. And again, it's not even about the Saints defense like we talked a lot about. I don't think that they'll be able to protect Derek Carr. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball on that defense. I think there's going to be games where the Saints, their weaknesses hold them back in. And I think that's going to be one of them. Now, Deshaun Watson is a factor too, because if Deshaun can run around and extend plays, the Saints have had a hard time with that because they're a 4-3 defense. They have bigger defensive ends. So they're not, they don't have a bunch of 260-pound guys who are going to chase down a quarterback who actually is out and running.
Right.
Now, in the division, that's not a big deal because you're talking about Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins as the two guys you're worried about.
Yeah.
Outside of the division, you're talking about a lot of mobile guys. So I think there's going to be a balance. But I would say that if the Browns can run the ball and get after the passer in that game, they win by a touchdown minimum.
I like it. I'll take that. And interesting, you mentioned Nick Chubb because that potentially is slated as a possible return date that week or the following one against the Steelers. Right. So that could be very interesting to see where Nick Chubb is at during that time. Jeff, man, great to have you. I'm glad hopefully we distracted you from your 16-day stand there in California. But tell people where they can find you, where they can get your stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. It's Nowak. It's where I post a lot of my content, but you could also check out WWL.com. It's where I post all my stories. And I have a podcast called Inside Black and Gold, which if you go check it out, it's on YouTube. And you can see this exact same background because this is where I've been doing everything in this hotel room that I've been in for 22 days. But yeah, that's about it. And I'll be on the radio in a couple minutes here, but no one's listening to that. So at least not people are listening to this.
Right.
Some people are listening.
Some people, of course, yes.
But no, I appreciate you for having me. It's funny. I've done so many different hits on so many different shows and whatnot since I've been out here. It's hard to keep track of them all, but I appreciate you having me on.
Well, no, we appreciate it. And thanks for giving us the insight on the Saints. Maybe we'll talk to you again in November.
Sounds good, man.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. All right. There he goes. Jeff Nowak covers the Saints, digital producer, sideline reporter, does a tremendous job. Great insight there on the Saints. And I've been a Derek Carr. I like Derek Carr. I do. I like Derek Carr. I think what Jeff said is accurate. He's a middle-of-the-road quarterback, which if you have everything else built around is okay. So, I don't mind Derek Carr. Olave out of Ohio State, of course, boy, Chris Olave is a talent. But it all comes down to health. Like you said, my concern here is that left tackle position for the Browns. And another news note that we wanted to get to coming out of camp is there is still no Jedrick Wills. How concerned are you about Jedrick Wills not being at camp? Remember, he had that knee procedure in December. And before that, it was okay, day-to-day, could come back. Then he didn't have what we assumed was a nice, light little scope. Well, he's still not here. So you put in James Hudson, who gets burned at right tackle, at left tackle. God bless him for trying, but I'm not confident with James Hudson there. Now you're mixing in a couple other veterans in the trying to audition. If that doesn't work, do you have to go out and get some seasoned veteran off the scrap heap? Like, this is a concern, and we don't know when Jed Wills is coming back. And Jed Wills, at the best of times, is good, not great, good. In his last year of his rookie deal, remember they picked up that 5th-year option for him. How concerned are you? Leave comments down there. Hit us up on Twitter at AndyMC81 at SickPodBrowns. And make sure while you're hitting us up, while you're clicking subscribe notification, you're heading over to our guys at Homage. Homage gear. Look at that. Specialized in ultra comfy, high quality looks, repping sports, pop culture, and more legendary moments. Learn more about Homage with the link in the description to this fine program. And I am wearing a gorgeous Homage shirt right now. Look at this. This is Autogram brown shirt. This is one of the customized shirts. They have great ones where it has like the old helmet. They got Nick Chubb. There's a whole bunch of gear from the Browns, Ohio State as well. It's super comfy. Like, legit. I know I just read it, but this is like a very comfortable. You have some shirts that kind of stick with it. This is a very soft, comfortable shirt. So make sure you check out our guys at Homage. I wanted to mention this too. Over the weekend, on Friday, I was in Kentucky, and your boy is an official executive certified bourbon steward in the Stave and Thief Society. Went down to Louisville, Kentucky, got my challenge coin pin, or challenge coin, got my pin, official executive certified bourbon steward. Did an all-day course. We were sampling bourbon, tasting those, brought home a sensory kit. Had a whole bunch of great food there. Louisville, Kentucky, phenomenal. Moonshine University. Got a cool shirt from there too. Moonshine University. If you are a bourbon fan, whiskey, whatever, you can do the online course. I did that a few years ago, but the in-person was super fun. I had an absolute blast. It was so fun, so cool. So now I'm an official certified executive bourbon steward. Stave and Thief Society. This will be up on the set next time. There's the handbook behind me there. So that was a ton of fun on that one. But really, to finish off on the Browns notes, I want to know this. You're concerned for Jed Wills, the left tackle, not being there. If you want to weigh in on the Michael Hall thing, I'm just going to wait till the legal process plays itself out. Want to get to the one word to describe your feeling about the JOK contract extension. How do you feel about star linebacker, rising star, balled out last year? JOK was everywhere, and it was awesome. He put on some weight. Looks like he still has it on. We'll get a couple of one-word reactions that were sent in on X at SickPodBrowns at Andy MC81. Matt Florjancic says solid. I heard we had a couple fantastics, phenomenal. Also from our boy Grant Gillen out of Canton, who's just at the Fantasy Football Expo. His one word was excellent. Said this too. This is a much needed extension on the defense. When you play in a conference with QBs like Lamar Jackson, you need a linebacker that can run sideline to sideline and make the tackle in the open field. He's also athletic enough to guard tight ends like Laporta and Kelsey. And I agree. And remember, that is primarily why he was drafted. That was the skill set, to defend Lamar Jackson. You can't have two burly dudes who run straight ahead and tackle for Lamar Jackson. You need a spy. You need that guy who can go sideline to side, who can cut into those edges to cover the types of Lamar Jackson and the ever-growing mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. But I think we have just seen the tip of JOK, of his potential, and he was awesome last year. 3-year extension. Congratulations to him. That's awesome. So get yours in. What do you think of the JOK signing? Are you concerned about the Jedrick Wills and left tackle situation? And if you are, how concerned? Any solutions? I'm just got to hope those two other veterans pop up and go. This is another reason why those Minnesota Vikings scrimmages, practices this week in Berea are super important. We got to have some clarity, because I don't know about you. I don't particularly want my injury-plagued quarterback to be able to run for his life because left tackle gets broken down. So we'll see. I'm concerned. I hope we get some clarity, but this is a concerning bit to me. And Brandon Ayuk too. Quick note to finish this thing up. Brandon Ayuk reports didn't want to come to the Browns. Trade in place. Steelers might want him. I think he ends back in San Francisco. Like I said last week, I don't want anything to do with this guy. Prima donna for a glorified wide receiver too. You want 30 mil, bro? Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, those are Tyreek Hill. Those are 30 mil guys. You're a top wide receiver on average teams. You're not a number one. You're a very good number two. And I'm glad that he did not want to come here, because the deal that was in place reportedly was Amari Cooper, a second-round pick, and another later draft pick. A second-round pick and Amari Cooper? And another draft pick? Not interested. How about this, Andrew Berry? Go draft a star quarterback or a star wide receiver. How about that? Go draft a star wide receiver and have him on that rookie deal. Hopefully that's Cedric Tillman. But now you have your first-round pick backs. Don't be giving away these high draft picks. Ayuk, get out of here. I want development of Tillman. I like what I've seen of Thrash as well, the rookie. Cooper's there. Jerry Jeudy's got to step up. Brandon Ayuk, you keep your headaches, you keep your contract and your prima donna ship, and just go and follow in the money. This guy doesn't want to. He's not interested in winning first. He's interested in cash. Perfect point. You're in San Francisco, who goes to the Super Bowl, and you won't take 26 mil. So not interested in Brandon Ayuk. Let me know what you think. Click subscribe, notifications on. Thanks to Jeff Nowak. Thanks to producer Jimmy. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. And as always, go Browns.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.